Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Devaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 19, text 18. Evam
Eva
cha
Cha
tasmin
Asmin
nara deva deve
Deva Devi
paryasaspaste divi deva sangha
Sangraha
Vasaya
Prashash
Bhumo
Umo
Vyakiran
Yakiran
Prasinir
Prasunay
Muda
Uda
Muhur
Uhu
Dunjupayas
Tundubayaha
Cha
Cha
Nidhu
Neduhu
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Deve
Evam Jatasmin Deva Devi
Payasha Pasate Divi Deva Sangha
Ayo Pavishte Diva Deva Sangha
Prasaya Bhama Vikiran Prasnanir
Prasasya Bhumao Vyakaran Prasunar
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Uda Muhur Dundubayas Chanedu
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Deve
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Paryas Vastate Divi Deva Sangha
Ayo Pravishte Diva Deva Sangha
Prasaya Bhama Vikiran Prasnanir
Prasasya Bhumao Vyakaran Prasunar
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Muda Muhurdundabayas Chanedu
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Deve
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Paryas Vastate Divi Deva Sangha
Ayo Pavishte Divi Deva Sangha
Prasaya Bhama Vikiran Prasnanir
Prashasya Bhuma Vyakaran Prasunar
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Muda Muhurdundabayas Chanedu Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Deve
Ayo Pavishte Divi Deva Sangha
Prayos Vasvaste Deva Deva Sangha
Prashasya Bhuma Vyakaran Prasunar
Prasaya Bhama Vikiran Prasnanir
Muda Muhurdundabayas Chanedu
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi Prayos Vastate Divi Deva Sangha
Prashasya Bhumo Vyakarin Prasunar
Prasaya Bhama Vikiran Prasnanir
Muda Muhurdundu Bayaschaneduhu
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Prayopyavishte Divi Deva Sangha
Prayos Vaspaste Divi Deva Sangha
Prashasya Bhumo Vyakirin Parasunar
Prasaya Bhama Vyakiran Prasnanir
Muda Muhurdundabayascha Neduhu
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Chatasminada Deva Devi
Evam Chatasmin Naradeva Devi
Prayopavishte Diva Deva Sangha
Prayos Vastate Divi Deva Sangha
Prasasya Bhomo Vinkarin Pasunir
Prasaya Bhama Vyakiran Prasnanir
Muda Muhur Dundabhyas Chaneduhu
Muda Muhur Dundapayas Chanedhu
Evam cha tasmin naradeva devi
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi.
prayo pavishte diva deva sangaha
Prayo pashvate divi deva sangha.
prashasya bhumao vyakarin prasunar
Prashaya bhomo vyakiran prasnanir.
mudha muhurdundubayascha neduhu
Muda muhurdunda bayascha nedhu.
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi.
prayo pavishte divi deva sangha
Prayo pashvate divi deva sangha.
prashasya bhumo vyakiran prasunar
Prashaya bhomo vyakiran prasnanir.
muda muhurdundubayascha neduhu.
Muda muhurdunda bayascha nedhu.
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi.
Ayo pavishte diva deva sangha
Prayo pashite diva deva sangha.
Prashasya bhuma Vyakin prasumar
Sarvamo vikiran prasnanir.
Buddha muhurdun dubayashta neduhu
Muda muhurdunda bayascha nedhu.
Evam chatasmin naradeva deve
Evam chatasmin naradeva devi.
prayo paviste dive deva sangha
Prayo pashite diva deva sangha.
prasasya bhuma vyakarim prasune
Prasaya bhomo vikiran prasnanir.
mudha muhurdundubayascha nedhu
Mudha muhurdunda bayascha nedhu. Everyone chant. Is there anyone online that would like to chant? Or we can read the word by word synonyms. Evam, thus, cha, and, tasmin, in that, Naradeva Devi, upon the kings, Prayavasate, being engaged in fasting to death. Devi, in the sky. Deva, demigods. Sangha, all of them. Prashaya, having praised the action. Bhomo, on the earth. Vakiran, scattered. Prasanunai, with flowers. Muda, in pleasure. Muhur, continually. Dunda by hill, celestial drums. Cha, also. Nedhu, beaten. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Thus the king, Maharaj Pursket, sat to fast until death. All the demigods of the higher planets praised the king's actions, and in pleasure continually scattered flowers over the earth and beat celestial drums. Purport, even up to the time of Maharaj Pursket, there were interplanetary communications, and the news of Maharaj Pursket's fasting unto death to attain salvation reached the higher planets in the sky where the intelligent demigods live. The demigods are more luxurious than human beings, but all of them are obedient to the orders of the Supreme Lord. There is no one in the heavenly planets who is an atheist or non-believer. Thus, any devotee of the Lord on the surface of the earth is always praised by them. And in the case of Maharaj Pursket, they were greatly delighted and thus gave tokens of honor by scattering flowers over the earth and by beating celestial drums. A demigod takes pleasure in seeing someone go back home. A demigod takes pleasure in seeing someone go back to Godhead. He is always pleased with the devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his Adidaivic powers, he may help the devotees in all respects, and by their actions, the Lord is pleased with them. There is an invisible chain of complete cooperation between the Lord, the demigods, and the devotees of the Lord on earth. So yeah, this is a really nice verse and really good purports. And I was listening to a Prabhupada lecture, and someone was asking Srila Prabhupada about Brahma, and Brahma travels on a swan airplane. And so Prabhupada was talking about, well, like, what do you know? With your limited senses, mind, and intelligence, the technology is a different standard on higher planets. And it's described that Brahma, he travels on the swan airplane, on the swan. So that's the demigods. And so I was listening to some verses. So Deva, the demigod's devotee, is also demigod, is Deva, and not demon asura, but they are sura. And so they're always pleased when someone goes back home, back to Godhead. And and the other thing that I was always thinking about in Krishna book and 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, how the demigods, they were always having a description there, how they were showering flowers on Lord Krishna and Balaram when they kill demons and things like that, and beat celestial drums. So that's there too. So they were given reference to Maharaj Yudhisthira, how he also gave up his kingdom. He was, we were reading that it's not because of any karmic reactions that he was cursed, this thing took place. But Vrishket Maharaj was taking it as if it was his destiny or his karma. And I was thinking like, well, what's the use of the kingdom? Maybe it should just be burnt to ashes immediately. And he took out the vow of an ascetic and went to the Ganges and sat down to fast until death with this determination. And so that's actually really what's required, is that the ascetic motive at that particular point, at the time of death, is to hear the great topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and in that way perform sacrifice. And so this was Maharaj Prisket's position, is that he was very easily gave up the material world. You have a statement, Maharaj?
Thank you. Question maybe, why is the action of Maharaj Parikshit being praised by demigods? It appears to be a type of suicide he's proposing, he's decided upon. But it's not. If it were ordinary suicide, it wouldn't be praised by the demigods, and Maharaj Parikshit wouldn't be involved in it either. What to speak of the sages and all the great personalities who've come here from all over the universe? They wouldn't come for a person who, due to frustration and ignorance, tried to destroy his body to stop his suffering so that he could get some freedom, etc. That's in the mode of ignorance. But this is not in the mode of ignorance. And a similar example in our own times was Jayananda Prabhu. Jayananda Prabhu had cancer, very serious cancer. This is in 1977. Prabhupada was still present. And he was getting some funds from his family. He had some funds or some kind of insurance or something that was giving him money so that he could do further investigation to finding a cure, different things. And after some time, he tried some, but it didn't work. None of them were working, and the prognosis was still that he was inevitably going to give up his body, he was going to die soon. And you could tell by seeing him, it wasn't just some x-rays, you could see he was losing all his strength, everything, couldn't eat. So he decided to stop spending money on trying to find cure for that disease. Now, was that a suicide attempt? No. That was an intelligent decision made by a mature devotee. I'm just wasting time and energy here. I'd rather concentrate my last days thinking of Krishna in a divine atmosphere rather than in a hospital or an intensive care unit, etc. So there's a difference. What may appear on the external to be something inauspicious, but the demigods and all these saintly persons, as Prabhupada says, there was an invisible chain. What do you call it? Could you read what is it? Invisible chain? I don't know. In the purport?
Because that was one thing that was discussed about the invisible chain and the invisible cooperation between the Lord and the pure devotees. There is an invisible chain of complete cooperation between the Lord, the demigods, and the devotee of the Lord on earth.
Yeah, so they all knew that this was arranged by Krishna, and it was known that it was confirmed by the Brahman's father that this curse will happen. He has that power. He confirmed that his son had that power. And it was confirmed that he was destined to leave his body in 7 days. Anyway, now, a devotee is not that he doesn't want to live and has too much trouble and this and that. He has anxieties and he's frustrated. Not like that. If there had been some indication to Maharaj Parikshit that you should live, the planet, the earth cannot do without you, you're doing such important service, Krishna could step in and say, I overrule this curse. This boy is foolish rascal. What has he done? I overrule it. As he does many times, he overrules apparent curses and things. In the case of Prahlad Maharaj, his Hiranyakashipu's sister had a boon that she could be placed in fire and she wouldn't burn. She would be untouched by the fire. So she proposed, because she knew her brother wanted to kill Prahlad, she said, don't worry, don't be in anxiety. Just let him sit on my lap, then set me on fire, set us on fire. I'll be unscathed and the boy will burn. So they did this. She burned to death and Prahlad was unscathed. Who arranged that? This was a benediction that she had gotten from somewhere that was trusted even by Hiranyakashipu. But when the Lord doesn't approve something, Mari Krishna Rakike, Raki Krishna Marike. If Krishna wants someone to live, they're going to live. No one can kill them. And if Krishna wants someone to die, no one can save them. So, it's not that Parikshit was feeling sad because he couldn't rule and Kali was coming and he was getting upset. Not like that. It was an invisible arrangement between the Lord, the demigods, and the other devotees. But this was the arrangement, the divine arrangement. Just like in a drama or some kind of a play, the author knows what he wants to do. The person who's watching, he may be bewildered what's happening. Why is this happening like this? But the author has the whole plan arranged. And those who know the script, those who are friends of the author, close associates, the directors, etc., they also know what the plan is. So I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, so yeah, so there's like the plan, just like in a director's play. So yeah, Prabhupada was talking about the material illusion in a lecture I was listening to the other day, and it was explaining how we're a spiritual soul, and of course our material conditioning is not eternal. He was saying, and he was comparing it to how the sun could be covered in just a small area. So the clouds, they're not actually covering the sun, right? It's just a small portion, which is actually covered to me, appear to be more dim. So in the same way, Maya, or material consciousness, covers the actual real Krishna consciousness of the living entity, is that we're actually Krishna conscious. So our forgetfulness of Krishna is temporary, it's not eternal. So that's what we can strive for, is becoming Krishna conscious, and taking the example of great souls like Maharaj Pushkit, and have the invisible chain of cooperation between the spiritual master, the devotees of the Lord, and the demigods, and Krishna. They were mentioning in the verse that, first of all, the spiritual master is the sum total of all the demigods. So that's stated in the scriptures, that we understand this. And they're saying that the demigods, they actually assist the devotee with their adidaivic powers, like that too, to assist the devotee to become Krishna conscious. What the devotee may need, just in cooperation with the Supreme Lord. It's like what Maharaj is saying: if the Supreme Lord desires someone to die, they'll die, but if he desires to save them and they'll live. So that was an invisible arrangement, like what Maharaj was just giving the example, that the curse was actually reversed, where if Hiranyakashipu's sister can not be burned, but she was burned and Prahlad was saved. So that's it happened. It was an invisible an arrangement. It just took place unexpectedly. You had a question there?
I forgot to mention one point, and that is that Prabhupada, commenting on Jayananda's action, praised it. He said, yes, what is the use of so much endeavor? Better to concentrate. And he spent his last days organizing Rath Yatra in New York and Los Angeles. He was dedicated to that. And so Prabhupada approved of his using his last days and his last energy that Krishna had given him for service, rather than trying to save this body, which ultimately is in the hands of the Lord. And if I may, I can relay one pastime that's found in Sri Garga Samhita. I'll briefly say it was during the reign of King Ugrasena. After Kamsa was killed, Ugrasena, his father, was reinstated by Krishna as the king of Mathura, or Dwarka. So, as part of that, Krishna wanted him, Ugrasena, who in his former life was Maharaj Maruta, who had performed the greatest Rajasuya sacrifice, Ashvamedha sacrifice ever done. Krishna wanted him to perform a Rajasuya sacrifice, Ashvamedha sacrifice, to establish his own rule as the emperor of the world. So, in the course of doing that, Krishna's sons and grandsons, etc., his 7 members, took part in the tour and the horse being allowed to roam wherever it wishes for 1 year, and the soldiers, the fighters of the proposed emperor, would send out the horse, and if anyone captured the horse, then they would have to face the army. So anyway, the horse was taken up by all the great Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas, not all of them, but many of them took the horse, and so they got into a big fight. And then the side of Ugrasena would always win. But on one particular occasion, there was a Kshatriya who was inimical, and he didn't agree with Ugrasena's wanting to become the emperor. So he captured the horse, and there was a big fight. And some of the people on his side, the warriors, were great devotees of Lord Shiva. And so one of them was killed, and Lord Shiva was informed, and he was very upset. So he took the side of that side and fought. And he even killed one of Krishna's sons in the battle. So Krishna came to the battlefield personally and chastised Lord Shiva, brought his son back to life, and after that, then he left and more went on. Lord Shiva apologized for his behavior. Krishna said, "You can't do this." So Lord Shiva, he was so humble, he knew he made a mistake. He said, "Yes, because I got puffed up and I forgot who I was and that you're the supreme, so please do with me whatever you like." So there are instances of Krishna stopping something that was done which was not appropriate.
That's nice. Yeah, I remember when Jayananda came to Los Angeles, and he had consulted Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada had agreed that this was terminal, so then he can go to Los Angeles and until the point of death. I remember seeing Jayananda. He was in the wheelchair. He had someone carrying the wheelchair with him, so it was very glorious. I was out on Sankirtan. But when I came back, then that day, I heard the news that Jayananda had actually left his body, and there was a kirtan, and it was actually very glorious. He had gone back to Godhead. And I guess Srila Prabhupada had mentioned something, and they published what Srila Prabhupada had said, and published a picture of Jayananda in the Back to Godhead magazine. So I guess this was like Srila Prabhupada's first disciple, the first ISKCON disciple to leave the body and go back home, back to Godhead. So it was a landmark thing, and it wasn't ordinary case. So, but that's glorious. But yeah, that's another thing that I was thinking about. This is not a suicide mission, but this is the actual real Vedic culture, the real Vedic etiquette. Maharaj Persika is going to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. So it's not the fasting that's going to kill him. It's not a suicide mission in the mode of ignorance, but he's fasting, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, until the snake bird comes to bite him, like that. And because it's destined, as we read, and I believe we mentioned this many times before, no one stopped the snakebird from coming in. Not only that, but snakebird came in due to mystic powers as a brahmana. So no one stopped the brahmana as he entered, and bit Maharaj Persika. So this is actually glorious, but they were giving examples of what we read earlier in first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. His grandfather Bhishma, he was lying on the bed of arrows. And he just simply wanted to see the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. They're also mentioning that Maharaj Persika, he was lamenting, like his any sinful activities or any past misdeeds, or any offenses like that. So they're saying that we should be very repentful regarding any offenses or any sinful activities or anything during our past life before we became a devotee, like that. And we can be assured that if the demigods, if they're so powerful And by their Adidevic powers, they're assisting the devotees to become God conscious and Krishna conscious. And the spiritual master, what they're mentioning is the sum total of all of the demigods. Yeah, you have a question?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances and thanks for the nice class. I am wondering if we know we're going to die. I don't know how I'm going to die. I don't know when. But it feels like this program that Srila Prabhupada has set up is that it's like that we should have in mindset that we can pass on at any time. So make sure that we're chanting Hare Krishna in Sadhu Sangha. Is that, I'm wondering, like, is that kind of what it's like?
Yeah, what Prabhupada was saying here, Maharaj Prisket has even a more secure position than we do, is that at least he knows he has 7 days, right? We don't even know if we have 7 more minutes or 7 seconds left. But there was a case of Maharaj Krittvanga, Jai Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Maharaj Krittvanga was fighting on the side of the demigods for, 1,000 celestial demigod years. And so the demigods were very pleased with his fighting, right? So they offered him a boon, right? So he wanted to know, as his boon, how much duration of time left he has to live. And it just so happened that by providence, he only had a moment left to live. So he gathered his wits about him and he became God conscious, Krishna conscious within that moment, and gave up his body and went back home, back to Godhead. So we should be prepared. So always thinking of Krishna, because they were also mentioned this verse, Tesham Satada Yuktanam Brajata Purdi Purvikam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upiyantite. So to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which to come to me. So that's the principle, engaged in devotional service. That's how we're communicating and associating with Krishna, is that Krishna is non-different from his service. You know, the service that we're performing for Krishna is also non-different from his name. He's non-different from his activities or his words, like in Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is actually present in this specific form. So that we're always associated with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. You know, of course, it's, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it, bring it under control of the self. So, it's just transferring whatever attachments we have from from whatever attachments, change that account to being attached to Krishna, like that, and, they were giving lots of examples of great devotees, just always think of Krishna, but we're not wasting our time, and it's not like, well, this is kind of morbid. We're always talking about how we're going to die, well, we don't know how we're going to die, but at least being in devotional service, we know that we're going back home, back to Godhead, and that we can die in that way, thinking of Krishna. Like that, in that sense, that we know how we're going to die. We know we're going to be thinking of Krishna, but we don't know exactly what could cause our death, just like a disease, a terminal disease, an accident, or, it could be anything, so, always be prepared. And we have a lot to look forward to. Going back to God. That's the real world. That this is the illusory world. That was the thing that I was thinking when Maharaj was talking about the play, and there's a scheme, and the directors, the writers, the author, the original author, the screenplay writes, they all know what's behind the scheme, why certain things are taking place that's leading up to so many different things that they're setting up, right? Or a magician. The magician knows what's going on. It's all illusions, some sort of smoke and mirror. He's just not letting you see what's going on behind the scenes. What he's doing, behind his hands, the sleight of hand. He has all kinds of things going on, gadgets, makes it look like his what is it? His assistant is levitated, or cut in half, the box, or moving the things around. It's like, and one half of the box is actually the man in the armor, and the other side of the box is actually the armor that he just showed you. It's empty. He just put it together and put it in the box and turns the box around, and then the man walks out. Right? So it's illusion, so, just like a mystical magician or the playwright, who knows what's going on behind the scenes, right? So it's like that. That's like the invisible chain of cooperation between the Lord, who knows, what's taking place behind the scenes, where we're the spectator, or we're the actors, or the immaterial consciousness and material identity and illusion, identifying with the material body falsely, acting on the material plane, thinking themselves to be, a great persons like a president or prime minister or parliament or Congress, like that. So, but they were saying that at any moment, their position, they're kicked out. They're either removed by their countrymen who put them in office in the first place, and now they're not satisfied with them, or assassination. Prabhupada was saying, like President Kennedy, he was the youngest president in American history, very prosperous, wealthy family, the Kennedys. Nice, beautiful wife. They go to church every, Catholic mass or church every Sunday. Where was it? It was the picture perfect American citizen, like that, finished in a moment, like that, just finished in a moment, assassinated. Or Mahatma Gandhi, was assassinated, finished in a moment. So no matter how great or powerful a person may be in the material estimation, the Supreme Lord, and the demigods, they're completely in control. So, but that's what they were saying, that Deva is demigod, or Deva is devotee, Sura, not demon, Asura is that Deva, like that is the. So, were there any other questions or comments or anything we can discuss at this point? Then we can end class there. Srimad Bhagavatam class, Ki Jai.